Hello. It's the 25th of March. So we have just finished we've just gone by the spring equinox on the 20th. I think it was the 20th of March this year. And With Wisdom is very, very excited to have a special guest. A special guest, a very special person, Caro Gomez, who is going to be with us today for our session, and bringing all of her witchy wisdom into the space today. And it's quite nice, there's three of us, all three of us meeting around to chat around the cooking pots to find out what spring is, what's happening with us in spring and in our lives right now. So I'm going to hand over to Gabby to say hello, and then Gabby's going to kick us off with our first questions to Caro. Caro's going to have an opportunity to introduce herself in a moment too.
Hi, Caro. Nice to talk to you. We met each other already 4 years ago, and I'm having with me the gifts that you gave me like 2 years ago, I think, like with the Viva la Boca. And I was telling Sam also the Berkana rune, which is quite perfect for spring because it's renewal, fertility, and growth and a new life. So I'm very, very happy to have your energy over here with your big bush. And I know that you are also starting with spring a new journey or a renew journey in your work. And I'm eager to hear from which wisdom or what wisdom do you draw on for your work and the work you're doing and bringing forth in the world.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. I mean, even before you said, Sam and I are doing, I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm in. I think it was like my first, as I was listening to your invitation. Um, Firstly, because one of my most favorite things in the world is to be around women and sharing wisdom with women of different lineages, different backgrounds, different stories, that makes the pot very rich, and it really feels like such a nourishing medicine, and any opportunity to have that and to share that with the world is definitely a yes in my box, a tick in my box rather, because we don't really sit in boxes, us witchy. We kind of like rip them apart and
Rip them apart.
and then add some magical unicorn powder there. Um, and um, and secondly, just to introduce myself, my name is Caro Gomez, and I am originally from El Salvador, but have lived in the UK in London for the past 20 years. So half of my life there, half of my life here. And I think it really encapsulates this idea that you were sharing, Gabby, about renewal, and really a rebrand of sorts is more of a resurrection. And what happens when you're neither from here, neither from there, a whole mix of bloods and lineages within you, and what comes out, from that expression. And one of the wisdoms or lineages that I draw on so much in my work, and that's either, textiles, fashion, medicine work, holding women's circles, podcasting, speaking, whatever the thing is, it always comes through. And that's the wisdom of the Maya. That is part of my lineage. And it is a lineage that I've been studying and knowing and reawakening, I would say, since I was probably about 13, but more in depth now, as I enter my 40s, really going back to the land, which of course I grew up there. So you would think this is something I would naturally have done when I was there. But no, for me, I had to leave that land to come here. And this land here, this tiny island in the middle of the whole world, reawakened in me something that was sleeping. And so, in that process, that Mayan wisdom has come back. It's in my blood, it's in my mother root. but I had forgotten. And so it's been a journey of remembering, and through my work, really, whatever it is that I do, I invite people to do the same.
Mm. And
Wow.
as you, oh wow, sorry, I'm just as you spoken, there's something like a seed, like a very very kind of nourishing seed that's been germinating underneath, and we've just come through winter, but that's been germinating and waiting to come out. I kind of really feeling that sort of energy of pushing up and coming through the soil as you're speaking. That's just a very personal, the way that your words landed with me just then. Sorry, I had to just butt in and just share that.
Yeah. No, I like the thing that sometimes you have something so close that you need to go far away to
Mm,
see it, not to see it from another angle, because I relate totally with Caro's experience in that sense, no? By migrating, is that I could see myself more clearly and see my whole story and embrace it in the fullness of the story, you know? So I think sometimes being away from your home country is not easy, but also has big gifts. And happy that
mm,
you called them out and that you're bringing it to the world, Caro.
mm. It's lovely. I just want to ask a little tiny little teeny question there. You said from the age of 13. What was it then? Can you remember or recall what happened at that point?
Yeah, I so you know, when I think of my time as a young teenage girl,
Mm,
I always think of that time. Yes, of course, you know, the hormonal changes of that you go through as a teenager are very intense, and everything feels so dramatic and big, and you know, just deep and soulful. And I really connect to that part, you know,
mm,
you know, I recorded a podcast called Smells Like Teen Spirit, because the teen spirit is very connected actually to something that we then forget for a little while as we kind of walk into our 20s. But in those teen years, that and you know, I mean, you both have teenagers as well, so, or have had
mm,
them. I know yours are older, some, but
mm,
you know, that there is something so visceral in their energy, right?
mm,
And I think at that time for me, I felt very connected to that energy of where do I come from? Like, why do I know the things that I know? And I remember in school we had it was called national history, and basically it was the only lesson that we learned about the history of El Salvador, because it was a British school. So I actually, funnily enough, of course, learned so much history about Britain, and I ended up living here, which is, you know, not ironic, of course. But this lesson, you know, this national history was about learning the history of El Salvador and what happened before colonization, and learning about the Mayas and the indigenous people. And I remember becoming so aware of that and really feeling that pain, and
mm,
walking out of that particular lesson where we learned about, you know, what had happened when the conquista happened, so when the Spaniards arrived. And I was just crying, you know, I was crying at home, and I didn't understand why I was crying. I didn't understand why it felt so hard and so sad. And I had really no one to speak to about these things and be like, oh, you know, like I didn't feel like I could bring this to my mom, you know, like it didn't, that
Mm,
wasn't it. And so
mm,
that was the realization at that point. I was like, wow, this is really important for me. And a friend of mine reminded me not too long ago, she's my best friend, and she said to me, do you remember that one time we were about maybe 10 or something, and we went to Guatemala, and we went to Antigua, Guatemala, which is, you know, a beautiful city where it's still, you know, very much, now it's changed a lot, but at that time you could really feel the energy of that wisdom and that indigenous magic, and it's surrounded by three volcanoes as well, so it's incredible. And she said that I kept talking to all the indigenous women, and I kept asking them, you know, where do you live? Like, how do you make these textiles? And what's your favorite food? And like, I just was really curious and wanted to get to know them. I don't remember this at all. But so
Mm.
in her mind, she noticed this and she was like, "Oh, I wonder if I should be asking questions as well." That's how she received that story. She was like, "Oh, maybe I should be interested in this too." She wasn't. But when she told me that, I was like, "Oh, wow. So this is something that's always been there." And
Mm.
at 13, we were given this project in school where they said, you need to go and find out about your ancestry,
Mm.
find out about your grandparents, like people would find out about their grandparents, maybe do a little tree, and like put the names, and you had to tell some stories about that. It was a beautiful project. And I was like, oh yeah, great. That sounds really fun. That opened up this portal, is the only way I can describe it now, of going back and really asking questions. My grandparents were alive at the time, so I had that
Mm.
fortune of being able to speak to them.
Mm.
My grandma had so much information from my great grandmother, and I even have a photo of my great great grandmother, who I found out was a healer in a little village in somewhere remote in El Salvador. And I made a book. I mean, it wasn't, most people had like an A4, maybe like 5 pages of A4, in a little folder. I made a book. To me, it wasn't work. It was such a joy. It was history. It was discovery. It was seeking. It was a journey. And equally, I felt kind of lost with it afterwards, because I had this incredible book with photos, with documents, with stories, sayings, things that were part of this tapestry of what makes me me, but then also what I'm carrying, from all those that came before me. And I was like, shit, what do I do with this now?
Mm.
Like, now
Mm.
what? And so that sort of started a journey of remembrance. And now I'm 40. I'm like, oh, I see that as this kind of full circle moment.
Mhm.
And now we begin a new circle, a new journey. And it's taken that long, really. And I think, you know, those of you listening to this who want things to happen faster or quicker, or why isn't it happening already? It's like, no, I mean, time, when you see it as a circular element, everything changes.
Mm.
Everything
Mm.
changes. We need linear time. Don't get me wrong. I'm still, we need to sort of still work with that. We have the capacity to do both. But welcoming that concept, that wisdom of time as circle, which is a very Mayan concept, their calendar
Mm.
is a circle,
Mm.
has shifted so much in my life, and in the women I work with, who also embody and start to see time as circular. So
Mm.
yeah.
May I ask something? Listening to Caro, I was thinking about the youth nowadays, no? So I'm observing that many teens and youth feel lost and overwhelmed by the world right now. I don't know in Britain, but I see it here.
Same, but
About on one side, the speed we go is quite fast, and also um, it doesn't seem too concrete what to look for. No, when I was a teenage, you had like a linear impression of what you need to look for, or at least what's my experience.
mm.
I needed to go to university and graduate and do this and that, and I will get this and that. And right now we are in like kind of disintegration of things and reintegration. And what would you, I mean, from your experience, what would you say to these teens, to this youth, or to this? Uh,
Yeah. Oh, I love that question, because I have a 17-year-old, and that thing is coming in a lot of like, what's my next step, and what's the next linear step, and I try
Mm.
to, converse with her around this concept of time, um, and remind her, both of them, because I have a 17-year-old and an 8-year-old, but for the teenager as well, is like, we talk about our ancestors. We talk about where we come from, because when you're not rooted, you do float away, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have roots that anchor you and that remind you that you come from somewhere, right? You can just float away and just fly away with whatever anyone else says or someone else suggests or someone else tells you to, hey, let's do this. Oh, should we do that? And of course, as a teenager, you are at that stage where socially and peers are really important, and they have a lot of weight in whatever it is that you think and you feel. And, it's like, oh, I know I'm not going to take that bag because I'm going to be made fun of. And it's really a reminder and a conversation about where you come from. Practical things like having photos up of your grandparents or great grandparents, and if you don't know them, because many of us don't know them, sometimes not even their names or anything, we put objects around. So Latin homes are full of objects most of the time. They're very, Guy, they're full of objects, and I think, in probably same Sam, you might be like, oh yeah, Southeast Asian homes as well.
Yes.
Like there's artifacts and things, and like, oh no, I'm gonna keep this little tiny thing because it reminds me of that thing that happened 20 years ago. And those are altars that we begin to do naturally because it's a way of honoring, it's a way of remembering. And my daughter, the youngest one, has put on there some like plastic little toilets with poo on them, which I'm like, okay. But for her, they say they make her laugh, right? And I think that if you put that around in our altar, it is a remembrance of somewhere along the line of laughter, right? So
Yeah,
we don't need to know
absolutely.
exactly their names or exactly how they look like, or, sometimes it's just objects that we're drawn to that connect us to something bigger, older, more ancestral. And to allow those things to mean something and not just be like, oh yeah, why are you keeping that rock? Let's just put it back in the garden. It's like, no, if you're told to pick it up, there is
Then
a
hold
reason
it.
behind it. So honor that reason. And for teenagers, it's the same. I mean, most of my daughter's things are related to her boyfriend, granted, but that's love, right? And if that
Yes.
connects her to something that comes before that is love, then so be it. And they keep the flowers, and she hangs them upside down and they dry and they're part of, like all these things root you, connect you, so that whatever shit goes, sorry, I don't know if we can curse.
Yes.
Whatever goes outside, that here you've got your roots waiting for you to give them a little honoring, and a little thank you, and then off you go again, right?
I love it. I'm also I'm going to ask you another question, but I wanted to share this little. Can you see that little
Yeah.
pebble with
Wow.
the dark spots? And it's for another time. We're going to talk about this, but I did a shadow work weekend, and this was the little pebble that I picked up, which has got the flintiness, the hardness of the flint and the softness around it that kind of represent the masculine and feminine in me. That's what I picked it up. And then the hardness in me, that there is that kind of, let's go, Sam. And also there's what I'm trying to be a little bit more, bring more of, the softer Sam. Yeah, there. That's from my history of I just frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I was about to tell you.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
just
back.
life. That's just life.
You're back.
We froze for a bit in time. So
Yeah.
yes, it's hard and soft. Anyway, I'm going to put it down because I'm going to ask you another question, Caro. You've shared loads with us already, which is wonderful. And there is a sort of sense of an old soul in a very relatively young body, 40, but there's like this old soul coming through, which I hope will help you answer the next question, which is, how does the way you're living now align with your desired legacy for the future?
Wow, I felt that through my body. That was really nice. I think I feel, actually, I feel this landing into the body. My lovely friend of mine that I shall introduce you to, because you'll have a beautiful conversation with her. Her name is Franca. She said something to me, and she's kind of an oracle, really. And she said, I feel like your soul has landed in your body.
Mm, mm,
That
I feel that
really
too.
went, yeah.
Mm.
Ooh, the goosebumps. Because there is a maturity and a depth in the work that I'm doing now. And when I say now, I mean the past, I don't know, 3 months maybe. That it's been a long time coming. I mean, it's like I said before, time. It's not like that. No, it's not 6 months transformation. Ooh, it's not what the internet says. Transformation. Transformation is a lifetime.
mm-hmm,
But this particular moment in time, it is certainly a depth and a wisdom and a maturity to it that it's new to me, but it's known. It's not, it's like, oh yeah, I knew this was the next step. And what I practically mean by next step is writing in a way that feels representative of my thoughts, my truest, rawest, most potent thoughts that maybe before I shared them, but they were slightly more polished, slightly more presentable. Whereas now that's not it now. And I think it's also coming into 40s is like, okay, I don't have time for that
mm-hmm,
BS. This is the dish that we're having, take it or leave it sort of situation. And it feels so good. It feels so good. And I know that the legacy that I'm building, this body of work, which started with fashion, started with textiles as a way of entering this path as a portal. Actually, I've always thought that for me, textiles and fashion is a way of opening. This is why we wear adornment pieces, why we wear the color, why we wear our hair the way we do, because it opens us up to the depth of what's underneath, right?
Yeah.
That is, for me, where I'm exploring and where I'm bringing that magic into the world, whether that's through cacao gatherings, whether that's through online communities where we get to explore these things and ancestry in a very deep, meaningful, powerful way that doesn't aim to solve the world's colonial problems, but just wants to remember what remains within us. Even when we are from mixed backgrounds, different lineages, whatever the combination is, like we all have ancestry from somewhere, right? It's not just from the Amazonia or India or Thailand or all these faraway lands from where we are now, which is mainland Europe. There is indigeneity here as well, and
Yes.
the invitation is,
100%.
let's talk about that here on this land, because it feels even weird to say like British indigenous people. Like what? It sounds like an
Oh no,
oxymoron.
definitely there are. Yes, it's the
Yeah,
Celts and whoever else and
of
anybody else who
course,
came here.
Celts,
Yeah,
Anglo-Saxons,
yeah.
Norse people further up north. I mean, there are there's so much, and
It's a
how
very rich
I know
heritage.
that, yeah, and
Mm,
how I know that is because this was the land that awoke that in me, so I know
mm,
it's here,
yeah.
but it's unexplored,
Mm,
and so the invitation is let's explore it.
mm. I am going to bring us towards a close, but there's something around that. So, in terms of something that I'm leaving here with this kind of notion of what you've shared, being born here, but with a heritage of Sri Lanka and everything else in between, with all of the Dutch East India traders who are in my past on my mother's side, with all the Portuguese settlers, who are there in my blood, with the, everyone and anyone in between, there is something around for me exploring some of that cultural roots, my cultural roots. As I say, that has been supported through all the books that I read as a child, all of the stories of, the witches and the hags and the crones who lived here in this country, who have been there shouting and fighting and saying their piece for many thousands of years. I'm also listening to them to pick up on my heritage, which I'm very excited about. And that's it's the right time for me right now. I think it's like you said, this is the meal that you're being served right now. I feel like that feels like a really lovely kind of image that I'm taking away. This is the spicy Sam that I've got here, which I'm getting to know. That's what I'm taking away. What about you, Gabby?
Oh, Sam, I like the spicy Sam. Well, by listening to you, and I was mentioning Caro before this conversation over here in public, for me, but it has been quite a journey because actually my ancestors come from this continent, no? And it was always a challenge of identity in Venezuela, because my grandparents came from Estonia and my father from Spain. So actually, they were all from this side of, they were from the lands that colonized people or did things, or the white men, and all these things. So I carry with myself kind of shame or not. So I'm willingness. So I always dream, and I love in Venezuela, for example, the black people in the coast that they were drumming, and so I always loved them. And in Venezuela, the good thing is I was always accepted, because in Venezuela we are all Venezuelans. That's a beautiful gift that Venezuela gave me. So, but it was inside myself when I came here, and I understood the first time what racism means, because I live it but in a different way. Not because I was the target of racism, but because I was not. I was seeing my privilege of having the look I have with my Latin American blood, no, and to reorganizing myself all these different identities. It has been quite a journey to reclaim my Venezuelan roots, because I'm Venezuelan. It doesn't matter which blood goes in my veins, but I'm also from here. So, and what you said, it's also awakening all these things. When I was reading that most of the witch burns started here in Germany, in the near my town, and when I had my remembrance some years ago, it was like, wow. So it's been like honoring where I come from, the power and strength of the women that also fought in this continent for not being silenced, and also the aliveness and color and acceptance in Venezuela that I have the gift to live and being born with. So I'm taking that with you too, also to see all our journeys in different countries and all these mixtures is, for me, is the message. We are all at the end. It's beautiful to remember our roots. It's beautiful to be aware of who we are, but also it's beautiful to embrace all of what we are. But because at the end of the day, we are all interconnected. So that's what I'm taking. Thank you, Caro. And before, Caro, when you finish, just let us all know, and we will post it on YouTube, also your social media. But if you can let people know where we can find you, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'm taking away how, again, another confirmation, another pebble in my cup of how nourishing and important these conversations are, of getting women together, and sharing ideas and sharing their wisdom, and knowing that we don't need to silence what those thoughts are, even if they're diverse from what is culturally going on, or if it's something that we've been thinking for a really long time, but we're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that, or I shouldn't do that. In order to be in integrity with who we are, all the parts of who we are, we have to accept that counterculture is part of that. And so it can feel scary, but when you have roots, not only in your ancestry and in where you come from and in all these things we spoke about, you know, altars, objects, adornment, also in the women that you get to connect with now, that you get to meet now, there's also power in that, and knowing that you'll be accepted exactly as you are in those spaces is magical. So get yourself into spaces where you are accepted exactly as you are.
Love it. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
as where you can find me on Instagram. I love telling stories on Instagram. It's like a digital journal for me. So you'll find me there on @Caro Gomez _ Witch. And I'll send you guys the links anyway, so you can just put them on the comments.
We'll pop them in.
Yeah. So come and hang out.
And if you have something coming up, also send it to us. And when we post it on YouTube, then we will have.
Definitely.
So basically my newest offering is Ancestral Awakening, and it is again, you know, it's basically the in-depth version of what we spoke about briefly here. And again, that is a space that welcomes you exactly as you are, with all your corners and edgy sides and the softness as well.
Love it. A bit like your fashion. We're going to have to close here. It has been such a joy talking to a joy witch today. And so lovely to have you in our circle, I think, and to have you as our first guest. We knew that we needed you.
What an honor, seriously.
Thank you so much.
It is so beautiful. Thank you, Caro.
Yeah. Pleasure.
Bye.
And thank you to all that will be watching us in the YouTube video, and please just share, like it, and comment. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.